Hi, my name's Vince Sheehan, and today I'd like to talk about Vertigo, the 1958 film directed by Alfred Hitchcock and starring James Stewart and Kim Novak. I'd like to go through this film, exploring its structure in terms of how the plot's put together, as well as the themes that crop up in this movie. Now, I suppose if you could sum up what this film's about in a sentence, it would be something along the lines of a retired detective duped into aiding and abetting the murder of a man's wife. And you could say the film's in 5 acts with an introduction. And in the introduction, we are all of a sudden dropped into the middle of a rooftop chase between the police and a criminal. The criminal jumps over onto another roof, and the detective, who is played by James Stewart, his name's John Ferguson, but his nickname is Scotty. He trips and he hangs onto some guttering, and he looks down and he suffers a severe bout of vertigo. The ground seems to move, and there's that famous camera shot of the perspectives distorting. And the other policeman stops running after the crook, comes to help Scotty, but in doing so he falls over and falls to his death. This trauma Scotty experiences during this rooftop chase has lasting consequences throughout the rest of the film. In Act 1, we see Scotty again, this time in the apartment of his friend. She's Midge. I think she's Marjorie, but her nickname's Midge. She's an artist stroke fashion designer. And here Scotty is clearly recuperating. He's about to be able to get out of his wheelchair and walk around again. But he realises he still suffers from vertigo and acrophobia, the fear of heights. Scotty then meets a friend from college, and despite the fact that Scotty's retired from police work, his friend Gavin wants him to go back to help him. His wife is behaving very oddly. She just walks around going away in her car, and she appears to have no recollection of these trips and of this odd behaviour. It's almost as if she's possessed. Scotty doesn't really know what to make of this. His friend Gavin works in the shipping business, clearly wealthy, but Scotty eventually reluctantly agrees, and he first sees Gavin's wife, Madeline, at a dinner in a posh restaurant, and Scotty seems to be attracted to her. This lady, beautiful lady with platinum blonde hair. So then he tails her. He starts his job and follows her around. And she goes around San Francisco. First of all, she visits a shop, gets some flowers. Then she takes a drive to a cemetery, which seems to be connected to a monastery with a big bell tower. Then she goes to an art gallery, and she sits there looking at this picture, this painting, which Scotty finds out is a portrait of this young lady from 100 years before called Carlotta Valdez. He carries on following Madeline, and next she goes to a hotel, and he follows her, goes in, but the receptionist says she isn't there, and it seems that Madeline has given Scotty the slip. With the help of Midge, Scotty then does some research into this Carlotta Valdez, which is on the headstone of the grave Madeline visited, and also, as I've mentioned, the person in the portrait in the art gallery. And they find out from this bookshop proprietor that she was this tragic figure who was abandoned by her husband and whom eventually committed suicide. Scotty then goes back to Gavin to report back to him about his wife's movements, and Gavin just tells Scotty a bit more about the troubled history in Madeline's family of past suicides and etc. Scotty then tracks Madeline down to the bay by the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and she throws herself in. Scotty jumps in after her and saves her and pulls her out. Act 2 really concerns Scotty and Madeline being brought close together and becoming lovers. In the aftermath of the suicide attempt, Scotty looks after Madeline. She seems to warm to him as well, and they eventually go to this Californian forest and they kiss as the waves crash about them. In Act 3, things seem to go wrong. Madeline describes these terrible dreams she has with this bell tower, this grave, these flowers, which of course are all the things she's experiencing while she's in this trance-like state, being Carlotta Valdez. And Scotty's trying to explain to her, look, you know, this is all stuff you've experienced. And so Scotty takes her to all these places to show her. And when they get to the bell tower, she rushes up the tower, and Scotty panics. He runs after her to try and stop her, but his acrophobia comes back with a vengeance, and he suffers vertigo again. The ground seems to move under him, and tragically Madeline throws herself off the top of the roof, killing herself. After a tribunal which exonerates Scotty of any blame, although it doesn't paint him in a flattering light, failing to stop this suicide due to his fear of heights. Scotty has this terrifying nightmare, a really striking moment in the film. Act 4, Scotty's in a deep depression. He's catatonic really, and he's visited in hospital by Midge. Eventually he recovers somewhat, but he still sees visions of Madeline wherever he goes. Eventually he does see a lady who looks just like Madeline, except she's got brown hair. And he introduces himself, and her name's Judy. It's here that we realise that Judy actually is Madeline. They're the same person. She tries to write a letter to Scotty to explain what really happened on that day, but then she decides to tear it up before they both go to dinner. In Act 5, this is where the penny drops for Scotty. Still obsessed with Madeline, Scotty makes Judy wear certain clothes. He even makes her dye her hair to make her look more like Madeline, this platinum blonde colour. But it's then that he notices the necklace Judy's wearing is the very same necklace that Madeline wore, which was from the painting of Carlotta Valdez. All of a sudden, Scotty realises that he's been deceived. In a fit of passion and anger, Scotty drives Judy back to the tower to make her retrace her steps. And she does. She's forced to go up to the tower with Scotty behind her. And Scotty seems to be cured of his acrophobia here. It doesn't seem to bother him. They go all the way to the top of the tower, and Scotty confronts her about this. And it's here we realise what really happened. Gavin, the person who hired Scotty in the first place, he wanted his wife dead. So he found a lookalike, made her dressed up just like his wife, and staged her suicide by tying her up and holding his wife at the top of this bell tower and throwing her off so that Scotty, who wouldn't go to the top of the bell tower, could see this suicide take place. Therefore, Gavin would be cleared of the murder. It was clearly a suicide, and the lookalike would be left to go, this Judy. Despite this deception, the two love each other, and it seems that Scotty's willing to let this all go. But then in this marvellous moment, a nun appears in the bell tower in a really creepy way, and this startles the couple, particularly Judy, and she falls out the tower to her death. And that is the tragic end of Vertigo. Now, some of the themes which crop up in this marvellous film include obsession. Scotty is just obsessed with this woman, and you can see the seeds of that planted the very moment he looks at her in the dinner, right at the beginning of the film. It's very cleverly done. And this sense of obsession grows, and this obsession threatens to destroy him. The obsession, of course, destroys his love, Judy, at the end. It's a lot about desire as well, of trauma, of PTSD as well. The sense of terror and guilt which Scotty is afflicted with from the event in the introduction really plagues him for most of this film. Psychologically, the idea of nightmare and dream is a powerful device in this film as well, as is the hair and the jewellery, which is passed from the portrait to Judy or Madeline, and that kind of runs through the film as well. And of course, acrophobia and vertigo itself, with those amazing shots Alfred Hitchcock employs. So Vertigo, yeah, it's an amazing film. Of course, you don't need me to tell you that, but if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, and if you haven't seen it for a while, re-watch it, because it's definitely one of those films you can re-watch several times and get more and more out of this, like any great piece of art. Thank you for watching. Please stick around for a brief slideshow of the structure and the themes of this film. Bye.